She'll hear, she'll hear with Serious Talisman. So continuing on from that coffee, continuing on from where I left, I said that um, basically when I was, after being literally homeless, I was going to see an apartment, and then I met the owner that structurally had to be a trafficker. And this is also how certain people are trafficked, because when he saw me, he was like, no, 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 you need to live in a better place. And he showed me a place that he didn't tell me, but it was the place that him and his family were living in. So I felt, when I found out about this, really, really honored that basically I was let into his house, of course, as a tenant, but it created trust. And this is unfortunately also um, how people are basically trafficked in cults, because the great sense of belonging, appreciation, and the fact that it's literally, the location that the family of the realtors were building from them for themselves, and the people were living there for years, families, that created a lot of trust. Okay, so it wasn't like I was going to live in some, and it was to a realtor, so that was not something that I suspected even, which is why I remember I was purifying the energy of the place for 3 years, fighting like a lioness, because I understood in what people called crime areas, then people still have to struggle. And even when they get to, I'm not saying posh areas, but definitely major locations, okay? Major locations. And again, the price was not too pricey, because it was a new, it was a 2B city, the biggest city territorially, but 2B city. And I did not know any of that. I was just looking for a home. And then when I was already living there as a tenant, I protected the place vehemently, as though it was my own, understanding that this is what it means to live in even a an important real estate area. And that was, kind of a reality check. And this is also how I never thought about the realtor for 3 years, that he would be a part of any of the things that I was dealing with. Um, and now structurally, I know, again, it was my Neptune, it was my Pluto square, but the real finding that out was my Neptune square. Um, and so, um, that definitely, how should I say that? Both the fact that I went from homeless to living in what seemed to be like fair rent for 3 years. And I was just weirded out by the entire thing, because at first the struggles was to educate an entire village not to ask a lady if she's living alone. Like, if I live, like, let's say I live alone, it's probably because I don't want to mingle with, okay? Um, or because, I don't know, my husband is working and traveling and so on, and I'm not the wife that tags along. Yet I'm an independent, sovereign woman. Now, this is also where um, that real estate was fought over so much that when things exploded, the first text that I sent to the realtor was like, "Are you kidding me? Like those, do you know what's coming? Those people who try to take over this place, they're not intending to leave you alive." And I was not demoting him. Like if I didn't manage to protect the place and the people that were ritually abused, they're gonna need houses. Um, and so with that Neptune square going from the normal challenges of like living in a village life, okay, a village culture, and yet the place being so sought after that I was like, and yet the rent is fair, and other families live there with children, some of them for 14 years. That was not something that I was predicting to become a place where I would have to flee, a cat would be slaughtered, and then the rest of the neighbors would probably have to flee. And this is just one example of that thinning of the veil. It was also collision, right, between cultures because obviously there was all kinds of people that came from many origins and cultures and worlds, and the expectations of one another for what they see was completely upturned. For me, if I live at the place where that's the house that was built for the family of the realtor, I say, oh wow. Not even knowing that for some families, and I'm not saying that particular family, but some families are treason based families. And how everything was being exposed from the core, not to me, because before me nobody could keep. That was the place where everybody would change. There wouldn't be people living there for long. And I was the one person that managed to live there for 3 years, defending the place, purifying, saging, I don't know, and finding out that the people that built the place, for them as family, were involved. Later finding out that wealth consolidation is done by ritual abuse on natural resources. And then there was shit ton of natural resources where that place was. And now thinking back to my ancestors, very likely in Sarne they were natural resources because one time it was conquered by Poland, and one time by the Nazis, and one time by Russia, and one time by Ukraine, and it all seemed like nothing changed, and and probably they weren't just seeking for that particular region for no reason. They even say that the area of Israel Palestine is not easily conquered by anyone, whether it was the Ottoman Empire, the British Empire, the Palestinians say Israel, the Israelis would say other things, but in any case, people are like, where were you staying in the Netherlands? Ein hostel en Transformatorweg. Transformatorweg was a juvenile jail that was turned into basically a shelter during the pandemic. Ein is a hostel. It's a really lovely place. Like I would even totally recommend. It's next to like the train and stuff. People that had money and were homeless, that were already with work permits and so on. Then a lot of them rented places when they could afford it in that place. But I advise you, if you're going there in a crisis or because of a crisis, then take a separate room. Yeah, because you won't be able to sleep. People snore more when they have crisis in their lives. So, holistic health practitioner survival tips. Um, that would be Zuidoost, Amsterdam, and Transformatorweg. Yes, an hour in the tram for there, from there. So I don't know. So that was. But then to get there, I had to almost make a strike. It wasn't a strike. I was just so weak that I was sitting in the police station, not knowing anything to what to say, what to do. Then a lady came to me and gave me that address. Fortunately, I had the last euros to use for a taxi driver, and I thought it was 14 minutes walk, but it was 14-minute drive, and it was after escaping human trafficking in Amsterdam. So it was basically him being stuck in traffic, and then I opened the door to try to run away from the car because I think he's kidnapping me, and it was like, no, 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 we go there, here is the, I know, here's the, it's just traffic. So, and if you ask what was done with that up until this point, it was December 2021, the weekend before Christmas, and we are in 2026. Nothing up to this day. So, and the woman that was basically the front woman, they sent a lot of people, a lot of front women in those trafficking organizations, was working for the Bink that was checking the tickets and so on and so forth, threatened me that I would have a terrible, that if they catch me traveling black, for if I would escape their trafficking apartment, basically. Unfortunately, I never went with her. She was going right, I was going left. As far as I was concerned, there is into my death, because it was freezing cold, and I did not find the shelter, and no police officer was actually willing to help or take my testimony. Um, that's just so, and and according to her, she was using the apartment of the organization where they check the tickets to traffic people. So it's basically some dual use of real estate.